Welcome back to Tide Pod on the YouTube home of TideIllustrated.com. Jack Knowlton, Tony Sakalis, and we finally have a game to recap, Tony. Alabama beats Western Kentucky in its season opener. The Kalen DeBoer era kicks off with a 63-0 win. Crimson Tide has not allowed held its opponents scoreless in the month of August. I saw you tweeted that, which was pretty funny. But yeah, we finally have a game to recap for you guys. Alabama winning 63-0 over Western Kentucky. You wrote a story this morning on 4 takeaways. We're going to get into those, but I just want to get your overall thoughts. First of all, how did it feel to finally have football back in Bryant-Denny Stadium? Something to cover finally after an offseason of, well, a tumultuous offseason and then a fall camp where, we kind of got all the storylines out there. We wanted to finally see something on the field, and we finally got that last night. How'd that feel to be back in Bryant-Denny covering a game?
First taste of the Kalen DeBoer era. Pretty good, 63-0. I don't think you can argue with that, right? It wasn't a perfect game. It was there were flaws in this game. I feel like statistically, Alabama did better than they probably did on the field if you were just grading them, which is it's kind of from a analytical aspect. It's really hard to grade. I did a report card and I did takeaways, and I kind of on both kind of felt like, damn, am I being too hard on this team? They won 63-0, but I think part of that is just Alabama has some playmakers and they can really make plays. It wasn't a perfect game. It was a very exciting game. If you're an Alabama fan, there was a lot of fun moments in that game. If I was just watching that game as an Alabama fan, I feel like I would be pretty happy. I feel like if I was watching that game as an Alabama fan, I think I'd be pretty happy with how it turned out. You got Ryan Williams had 2 big touchdowns. 6 of the 9 scores were from 20 yards or more. That's pretty dang good, and then you had 2 80-plus yard scores. You had a 39-yard touchdown, a 55-yard touchdown. Like they were moving the ball. It was the same explosive offense from last year where they can score from any point on the field. The only problem I would say with this game is that you didn't really see Alabama have those sustained drives. I don't think they're going to be ripping off many 85-yard plays against Georgia, or any 85-yard plays against, I don't know, even some of the other teams they played, maybe Tennessee, maybe Missouri, so LSU, I think they're going to have more sustained drives against some of the better teams that they play. So you're going to want to see that. But I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with the stats. Even Jalen Milroe, I think, yes, you can talk about he didn't have a lot of those intermediate pick the defense apart, but what was he 7 of 9 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns? I mean, how do you get really much better than that? And he had another 3 touchdown through the air and 2 touchdowns to the ground. I think Cole Kublik tweeted today that no other Alabama player has ever done that in his career. And Jalen Milroe, I think this is the 3rd time he's done it. So it's just the dual threat, capabilities of Jalen Milroe are on display. It's something that I wrote about heading into the game. It's obviously something that's still going to work in Kalen DeBoer's offense. So it was exciting. There's things to fix, but it was a really exciting game, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good segue. Maybe we knock the bad out of the park first before we dive into 3 of your 4 takeaways. I think we're pretty positive, but you touched on some of the offensive miscues, and you acknowledged it in your column. It is really getting down to the nitty gritty, and everyone kind of overreads into their team's first game. But what in particular did you notice that maybe wasn't clicking? You mentioned it was so hard to scrutinize, right? Because they didn't have a drive over 4 plays until the 3rd quarter. It was a little difficult to really analyze what this offense is from a game management and a long sustained drive standpoint, like you said, just because simply they were getting off the field one way or another. Normally it was ripping off a 85-yard touchdown, but we didn't see the offense on the field for very long until late in the game.
Yeah, it was also 6 of the first. Oh yeah, the first 9 drives were all less than 5 plays each, and then 6 of those went for touchdowns, but the other 3 I think were 3 and outs, right? So
Yep.
or maybe there was a fumble in there too, but it wasn't good. The when it was good, it was really really good, and it was bad, it was really really bad. And so I think that's kind of the frustration that you'll see on the offense. I think that's why I gave it a B in my grades. it just didn't, it's tough because like you can't take away, like, obviously if they could score on 3 plays against anyone they played, that'd be preferred, right? You don't necessarily need to go have these sustained drives. You'd almost wish they would have been challenged more, had to prove more on some of those, quick drives, just to see that they could do it, right? Because I don't think they're going to be able to go into Wisconsin and just score, 6 times on 3 or less plays. But we'll see. You really can't apologize for that. But I think that it's just something to monitor, I guess. I don't think you need to get too upset about it. But it's something that I think that I'm not going to be sold on this offense necessarily until I see it sustain drives.
I want to ask you, you mentioned Jalen Milroe's stat line, and it feels a little bit, harsh to interpret anything, but how did you interpret his first game? And obviously, he's only going to go up against better defenses from here. We saw the big playability. We saw the 4 + 2 = 6, quoting Ryan Williams after that. And we'll get into Ryan Williams in a second. But what did you think of his game? Again, only throwing 9 passes. You don't want to over scrutinize anything, but what'd you like? What maybe didn't you like about Jalen Milroe on Saturday?
I don't think we learned anything new about Jalen Milroe, but he looked good. But I think we already knew Jalen Milroe is a great athlete. I think we already knew he had big playability. So it's just more of look, 7 of 9, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, 10 rushing attempts, 79 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The things that I will say that like were encouraging, you look at that first touchdown. I'm going to have a GIF breakdown, on Monday, and we're going to go through all the big touchdowns that Alabama had. I really liked that first touchdown to Kendrick Law because you kind of saw Jalen Milroe step up in the pocket. He had really good awareness of the line of scrimmage, and he just dumped that little ball off to Kendrick Law, who then accelerated past for like a 22-yard score. I liked the wherewithal, the awareness for Jalen to kind of trick the defense into thinking that he was going to run and then throw it. That is his best skill. If he can continue to do that, that's going to work against good defenses because you have to respect that running ability, and so if he can do that and have that awareness, I think that's going to be key. I liked that, he was able to do that. I like that he only took 1 sack. If I'm looking at the stats right, I have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure Alabama, was only sacked 1 time. So that was a problem that Jalen Milroe had, holding onto the ball too long. You got to think he was playing without his left tackle in Kadyn Proctor, so he probably had a little bit extra pressure. So his ability to avoid sacks, I think, was a positive. That being said, it was kind of from a passing perspective, it was kind of an easy game for him. I mean, I think he had some open routes. The 84-yard touchdown to Ryan Williams. I mean, shoot, Ryan just beat the doors off his defender, and it's just a matter of just throwing it up there. And he to Jalen Milroe's credit, he hit Ryan in stride. Sometimes you freak out on those, you underthrow or you overthrow. He hit him well. He also hit him on a strike on the 55-yard touchdown. Once again, though, that was a really great route by Ryan Williams. Jalen just, kind of did his job. You could see on that second one, he went through his progressions. He wasn't, I don't think Ryan Williams was the first look there. If you kind of look at the play. So there's a little bit of maturity there. I think that there's some positives. I just don't think that there's really much you can take from it. And it is kind of I don't know how much of it is Jalen's fault. I had to go back and really look at some of those 3 and outs, but I think you'd want him to be able to sustain drives. But like I said, it's just really hard to critique when you have that solid of a game. 5 touchdowns are 5 touchdowns. I don't care who you get that against. It's going to be hard to critique your game there. So I'm pretty positive. I'm not convinced yet that it's going to be, I'm not ready to punch his ticket to New York, but I think it's a great start. And I think it's, kind of for the way the game played out, I think it's what you want to see. I think against South Florida, ideally Alabama would have a little bit more sustained drive. So they go into Wisconsin knowing that they can do that, because I don't think they're going to be able to do this against Wisconsin. or against Georgia, or against some of the better teams they're going to play later on.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's hard to just ignore those stats. I think it's fair to take them for what they were, which was good, and you hope to just kind of see the offense in the field and gives you more of an evaluation opportunity. All right, let's go to your second takeaway, or I guess it was your first in the article, but I bounced around a little bit, which was you said Alabama did a great job of replacing its portal departures, and yes, this is where we can fully talk about Ryan Williams. I think Alabama, the hope was they would bring in Ryan Williams no matter who they were getting or losing in the portal, considering how talented he was. But Ryan Williams had the debut probably above what any Alabama fan would have wanted him to have. Talk about him kind of filling in already at that wide receiver position. You've already spoke on him, but Hollywood was Hollywood last night. 2 catches, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. Doesn't get much better than that.
We'll get to your guy in a second, but Alabama made us look really smart yesterday. I predicted that that Ryan Williams was going to have a big game. I really particularly predicted that he was going to get on the end of some big plays from Jalen Milroe. That's what he's done in the preseason. That's what he did here. He's kind of been the big play guy. He's gotten open. Maybe if there's a critique, you would have wanted him to get open for more passes, for maybe a 6 or 7 yard play here or there to help them kind of build up those sustained drives. I definitely think he's going to be capable of doing that. But 2 catches, both touchdowns, both over 50 yards. That's Hollywood, like you said. You know what I'm saying? His first touchdown, he kind of beat the guy on a go route. The next one, he beat his man on a dig route. He's wide open both times. He had to work a little bit more for the second one. After he cut the pass, he had to kind of juke a guy and then wriggle off of a guy behind him. But then it's just a matter of using his speed. He's got plenty of that. And he pretty much burned him down the field both times. I think, in that part of the article I mentioned, I think Ryan Williams to me is the replacement for Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond was that big play threat for Jalen Milroe. And, he was that guy that, you could go deep to. He was fast. He was electric. No matter how well Jalen Milroe does in terms of improving his intermediate pass, his biggest strength are going to be his legs and his deep ball. He does both of those things probably better than any player in the nation. So it's not like you're ever going to want to take away those things. You want, talents and tools to accentuate that. And I think Ryan Williams totally helps him. So you can make that, 2 + 4 = 6 kind of comment. I thought that was really cool, like you said. But I think Ryan Williams is the perfect kind of receiver for Jalen Milroe. A guy that can make plays downfield, a guy that can be really electric and get on the end of those deep balls. So it was encouraging to see that. And I think, you have a couple of guys that can do what Isaiah Bond did, but I don't think anyone is like for a Isaiah Bond replacement as much as Ryan Williams is. So it's nice to see him do that. And on the flip side, the guy that made you look really good because you predicted that he would have a big game is Keon Sabb. I think if you asked anyone, the biggest loss Alabama had in the transfer portal is Caleb Downs. He's just an insane talent at that safety position, and it would have been so nice to have him paired next to Malachi Moore. That being said, hard to argue with his replacement, Keon Sabb, who had 2 interceptions, set up both of Alabama's first 2 drives. Really could have scored on that second interception return. I'm going to look up the stats right now. How many return yards did he have?
The second one was 64, and the first one was about 22. So I think it was about
80-something yards in return for interceptions. That's pretty good. And like I said, he had he made a juke move on the sideline there, he might have even had an even bigger return for a touchdown or something. So he's a guy that came off a really good defense in Michigan, and I think he's going to be, a breakout candidate, and then just a really, I think you have Malachi Moore at the back of the defense, so he's a stabilizing force. But I think Keon Sabb's another veteran back there, and he's going to be pretty big too for this secondary as it kind of looks to fill. This is a secondary that lost 4 or 5 starters last year, so adding a guy that's a easy starting quality like Keon Sabb was a big addition, and he certainly played the part. He looks like he's made for this defense, and I'm sure Kane Womack's really excited about that addition moving forward.
Yeah, we're 1 for 1 on stars of the game already.
Sure.
Great start to the season for us in mid-season form with our predictions. Yeah, I mean, I was eyeing up Keon Sabb on the play where he did pick it off because he lined up, or for the second one, he lined up. He was the only safety in the backfield. They were, I think, in just man coverage, and he was just playing deep. And I just watched him kind of stare down TJ Finley. And obviously, TJ Finley, we'll touch on him in a second. Not the best, quarterback, not quite at the Power 5 level anymore, but telegraphed the ball a little bit. But Keon Sabb made a great break on it and made a good play. And I'm just a big fan of the guy. I talked to him for about 10 minutes afterward, just got his thoughts on the picks and how he's kind of fit into the system and all that. And he just seems like he's, kind of hitting the ground running right now. He has a great relationship with Malachi Moore in that safety room. I think he's going to be a great player for this team. I'm a big fan. Like how he carries himself. Just seems like he's already cool with being a leader. Talked on about some of those younger DBs too, which we'll get into Kane Womack's swarm defense a little bit because that was your third takeaway. But really likes those guys. Kind of seems like he's stepping up as a leader for him. So, but that on the side, 2 explosive plays. That's what you want to see. DeBoer kind of said, he's a player that puts himself in the right spot at the right times. So that was definitely fun to see. And then Ryan, of course, just very fast, very humble kid too. Got to talk to him afterward. I know you asked him some questions. Has that raw chain. I think it's Alexander's his middle name, which Raw is it's a good football name.
Yeah, Ryan Alexander Williams, I think. So
yeah, I think it was Alexander. Yeah, Raw. So yeah, just 2 guys that have filled the hole at 2 key positions for Alabama, especially in the secondary, like you touched on. Offensive line too, a couple new additions. We should talk about that, and we can get into Kadyn Proctor as well. Of course, picked up an injury, or didn't start the game. Rather, picked up an injury in warmups. But you mentioned Parker Brailsford in this specific section of your column. Joked about him a little bit. We had a snap issue. Gave maybe some Alabama fans some trauma from last season with some missed snaps that it did result in a fumble, I believe, that Western Kentucky recovered. But otherwise, I think this offensive line, some of the new guys there, of course, Booker and Jaden Roberts, 2 kind of stalwart starters, but Brailsford among some of the newer additions for the offensive line. How did they look, and how did he look other than, one miscue?
I just kind of, it's a column, right? So you try to make a few jokes here or there. So I thought, I'd play on the fact that I'm sure Alabama fans didn't like to see another bad snap after all the mishaps they had with Seth McLaughlin last year. But I actually was kind of impressed with Parker Brailsford. Other than that, if you remember the touchdown with Jam Miller, the 39-yard run, that was brought on by Parker kind of pulling to the right side and really clearing the key block that sprung Miller for that play. So I mean, he's mobile. He can make some blocks. He's strong. But I think that mobility right there really allowed Alabama to open up a big play, and so kind of came as advertised as a guy that can move. A lot of what Alabama is going to do is pull and have their offensive linemen be a little bit athletic. So I liked what I saw from him. I mean, really look at the 2 big runs that Alabama had from its running backs. You had Parker Brailsford clear the way for that Jam Miller run for 39 yards. And I think the 85-yard run by Justice Haynes, you had Wilkin Formby. And I think it was, it was Wilkin and Jaden Roberts both come off the right side and they pulled, but it was Wilkin that cleared the defender. If you watch back on the Justice Haynes run, and that kind of opened up the run for Justice to break that 85-yard gain. So 2 athletic plays by Parker Brailsford and Wilkin Formby. Also the 21-yard run by Jalen Milroe. You had Tyler Booker kind of pulling. I don't know if he ever really had to hit anyone, but just having his presence there kind of opened up the hole. People were kind of like, oh gosh, do I go after Tyler or do I try to get Jalen? And I think that allowed Jalen to kind of blow by someone. So just the athleticism of that offensive line I thought was really encouraging. So there's three of the 6 big time scores. I think they all involved some form of a pulling lineman doing their part. And even the big plays too, right? So one of the things that Ryan Williams talked about was just the offensive line giving Jalen time to go through his progressions. I think, if you look at that dig route that Ryan Williams ran for his second touchdown, Elijah Pritchard was getting, really bull rushed at the left tackle role, but he was able to hold it off his defender in time for Jalen to kind of go through his progressions and find Ryan Williams over the middle. So it was a team effort up front, but I thought everyone did a pretty good job.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Pritchard having to fill in that left tackle spot. We saw Proctor wasn't present in warmups. I mean, what did we learn kind of after the game? Probably going to learn more this week, it seems like, with him as an injury.
Yeah, I think he's undergoing tests today, and you'll see. It looks like it's a shoulder thing, right? Just with his left shoulder in a sling. I think you had a video of that. Kind of hit it underneath his shirt. I don't know, he's trying to be out incognito or something, but yeah, it looks like he's got some kind of a shoulder thing. It looked like he maybe went down during one-on-one drills in pregame warmups. I don't know if he had maybe a shoulder thing that was bothering him before. It's kind of weird. You don't usually see people pick up injuries during pregame, drills. So either maybe he tweaked it, maybe he had something that was bothering him and they didn't want to, risk it. I really don't know, but we'll see. I think I think we'll probably find out a little bit more about that on Monday when we talk to Kalen DeBoer and kind of get a little bit of an update on that.
Yeah, well, we'll wait to see what finds that or to find that out. But Elijah Pritchett filling in well, and Kalen even gave him credit on Saturday for doing that and being able to come in when his name was called in a little bit of an unexpected fashion and do a pretty good job. So obviously, we hope that Kadyn Proctor's not out for that long, but Pritchett, at least in that game, served as a pretty capable backup. Shifting to the other side of the ball, your last two takes, Tony, and we were going to get into one individual player on the defense other than Keon Sabb that you thought was really good, but you mentioned that Swarm D. You're all in on it, to quote you, at least in your subhead. You wrote about how Alabama held Western Kentucky off, a Western Kentucky team that, as you said in your column last season, top 15 in the country. They averaged almost 300 yards a game passing, held to 145 total yards, including just 103 through the air, which was particularly funny given a comment that TJ Finley had, Western Kentucky's quarterback, of course, played Alabama twice, once with Auburn, once with LSU, claimed apparently that he had thrown for 150 yards in both of those games. Not only is that not a very high number, he actually didn't do that, and he was held under 150 once again. But you're all in on the Swarm defense. They made TJ Finley look a little bit goofy. What'd you think of them as
Alabama managed to hold TJ Finley under his embarrassingly low standard that he set for himself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why you would brag about reaching 150 yards in a modern offense, and he didn't even do that in any game he played against Alabama. Yeah, I went back and he didn't actually ever get 150 yards. So I don't know what he was trying to flex on. It wouldn't even be impressive if he did. It's extra not impressive. It's embarrassing that he hasn't done that in multiple games against Alabama's defense. But they were able to frustrate him again. Look, it wasn't a perfect showing on defense either, but I was really encouraged. I almost said Nick Saban. How many times am I going to say that? Kalen DeBoer, kind of talked about it after the game. He talked a little bit about just that never say die attitude for the defense. And there was times where, Western Kentucky drove into Alabama territory. They got into the red zone twice, but they didn't come away with any points. They had a missed field goal, and then they also had a fourth down conversion that they weren't able to convert on. And I thought that was a good statement for Alabama's defense to kind of, continue and really kind of hold themselves to a standard throughout the game. Also, you got to look at it. Look how much Alabama substituted in that game. You had the reserves coming in, midway through the second quarter, and they didn't really miss a beat either. I just thought it was really good. They stopped the run. They stopped, the pass. And, yes, I get it. This is a different Western Kentucky offense than the one that, ranked 15th last year. But I mean, it's still the same setup. It's still an offense that's designed to test the secondary. And this is still a secondary that lost 4 or 5 starters, still gelling, has a lot of young players. I mean, Xavier Brown was a starter, true freshman. So I thought it held its own really well. You look at Deontay Lawson and Jihad Campbell, they both led Alabama in tackles. They're 1 and 2 in tackles. I think they're going to be so big in this 4-2-5 setup as the 2 inside linebackers. And the only thing I guess the knock I would get against Alabama's defense is they only recorded 1 sack. But I think a lot of that is just the Western Kentucky gets the ball out so fast. It's really hard to get sacks against them. It's just it's a quick release thing. So, I mean, it's just all about how you can affect the quarterback. Obviously, Alabama affected the quarterback well enough that they weren't doing anything through the air. So, I mean, yeah, sacks are nice, but at the same time, if they're not giving you the opportunity to sack the quarterback, then you just take what you can get.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. The only thing I'll add, I enjoyed the balance, like you said, of kind of that youth, but also veteran presence. They were heavily rotating the DBs. I think I told you in the press box, if you would have told me that Bray Hubbard would have been the leading tackler in the DB room and the 3rd leading tackler on the team last night, I probably wouldn't have believed you. Maybe I would, just because it was Western Kentucky. But then above him, you had Jod Campbell and Deontay Lawson, 2 total veterans of this defensive unit. So it was kind of an up and down performance from everyone. Kind of got theirs to an extent. So I think you're right on. It looks like this defense is going to be pretty good and kind of flash some of that depth, especially in the secondary. One player in particular, this was your final takeaway, and you added this one kind of late on in doing some research. Qua Russaw, you touched in your article, was the Alabama's highest graded player from PFF, 86.5. Also had the best run defense grade, 83.2. 2 pressures in his 12 pass rushing snaps, finished with 4 tackles, including 1 for loss in a quarterback hurry. What did you think of his performance today, and what do you like about him as a possible? You called him at the end, so I'm putting you on the spot for that. If people didn't read the article, they're going to hear it from me now. You called him a possible breakout player of the year candidate for this Alabama team.
I think he definitely is. I mean, look at he's one of the freshmen that started yesterday. I mean, you had Xavier Brown get the start at cornerback. That was expected. You had Ryan Williams get a start at wide receiver. I don't know if that was expected, but it was not a surprise. And then he
said he didn't expect it. Said he
didn't expect it, but I mean, I think if I would have told you heading into the game that Ryan Williams would have gotten a start, you wouldn't have, been totally shocked. And then Wilkin Formby getting the start at right tackle, especially after, Kadyn Proctor getting hurt, that's not a surprise either. But Qua Russaw getting the start at Wolf was kind of like a whoa, but I think when you look at it, it shouldn't be a surprise. He's 6'2", 250, 2 pounds or something like that. But he moves really well. He's definitely the biggest of the Wolves, the players at the Wolf position.
The biggest Wolf?
Yeah, he's the lead Wolf. I don't know if you would call him the Alpha Wolf, but maybe he started. I don't know. But no, he's a guy that can do a lot. And I like him as a 3-down kind of Wolf. He's a guy that can set the edge in the run against the running game, and then he can also rush the passer. And I think I just like him where obviously Q Robinson had the only sack, and maybe he's kind of the best pass rusher of that bunch. But I think from a multi-skill standpoint, Qua Russaw is probably the most complete Wolf edge rusher they have, and I expect him to play a lot. And he really impressed in his start. He had 30 snaps, and I thought he did a really good job. Obviously you're not going to have those huge pass rushing numbers, right? Because just the way that Western Kentucky plays, but I thought he did really well. He was flying to the ball. I mean, even plays where I don't know if he got, credit for the tackle, he was right there, so if the guy, if somebody had missed the tackle, I feel like he was going to be right there to swoop it up, for no extra yards. So, he flew to the ball. I really like what I saw from him. And so, yeah, I'm kind of excited to see more of that. I think, if I remember right, during camp, Kane Womack called him like a freak and said that he's made huge strides. You talked about Bray Hubbard. Like, there's a few players on this defense that have really kind of transitioned. And maybe they didn't play a lot last year, but they're going to play more this year. Like, Bray Hubbard's a guy that played a lot of offense in high school. And so, like, you didn't really see him much last year, but he's going to be more of a factor at safety now that he's kind of more comfortable at defense. Qua Russaw didn't play last year because he was an inside linebacker in high school, and now he's progressing or transitioning to the edge rusher role. So I mean, that's a lot of people think, oh, linebacker is a linebacker, he should be able to do it, but different skill sets and stuff you got to learn, and technique and stuff you got to learn. So it seems like he's done that, and he's always had the skills. I mean, he's been a really highly rated recruit. So I don't think anyone's super surprised to see him do well, but it is nice to see him kind of live up to that potential. And, he doesn't play like a freshman. I know he's a redshirt freshman, but he doesn't play like somebody that's, really playing his first game. So I could see him definitely being a breakout candidate and kind of like the main player at that Wolf position, where I know there's two veterans in front of him, but I think from a, just a physical standpoint, I think he has the most complete game out of that bunch.
Yeah, I read through it. I really like your take on that. I just think, reading through what you wrote about, and obviously it was a little harder to notice some of those edge rushers, some of those defensive linemen when the sack numbers and the pressure numbers aren't as high. But you look through his numbers and you're like, wow, this guy had quietly a really good game. And again, you have to see how it kind of elevates as the competition gets a little bit harder. But yeah, I think you provide a pretty good argument for why the kid might be really good. And so Qua Russaw, one to watch. We're holding you to that as the season goes on. We'll see how he kind of becomes the alpha wolf, makes that position. I could see that in a headline, a feature headline down the road if he really has a breakout kind of redshirt freshman season. Okay, final thoughts on week 1, Tony. Maybe bridge the gap for us into week 2. We're going to do a preview show for Alabama's next game. As they inch closer to Power 5 opponents. They got South Florida first. Any final takeaways from Western Kentucky and things you're looking forward to this week and for next game?
I think this is the perfect game to just take it for what it was. I think it's okay to get excited about some of the things that Alabama did. I don't think you start, I saw Alabama's title odds just skyrocket or something after this game. I don't know if, maybe that's fair because they probably should have been high from the start, but I don't think Alabama really showed much that just totally blew my mind and changed my perception. Alabama's still pretty much the team that I thought it was heading into this game. That being said, I thought Alabama was pretty good heading into this game. I'm not sure how much we learned, but I think we validated a lot of stuff. I think this team is going to be able to make plays. It does have an electric offense. The defense is not going to be in shambles. This is not a secondary that's just going to be totally torn apart when it faces good offenses. So, I think that there's a lot of positives. I think the key to this week is just not getting carried away, and don't get carried away the other way too. Don't be like, oh, well, Jalen Milroe didn't have a lot of sustained drives. He can't sustain a drive. Well, he didn't have a lot of opportunities to sustain a drive. So, give him credit for the plays that he made, give Alabama credit for the plays that it made. Alabama is very balanced on both sides of the ball. They, and then on offense, they were able to run the ball and pass the ball. What was the breakdown there? 266 passing yards and 334 rushing yards. I mean, if they do that every week, they're going to win. So, you got to be pleased with that. Take it for what it is and see what they do against South Florida. I think these first few games, I think you're going to learn something. It's a nice little stair step for Alabama. I think this next game is going to be a little bit tougher, and then Wisconsin's going to be a little bit tougher. You'll have 3 little stair steps until you get to the.
And it's a really big stair step.
Yeah, and then possibly the biggest game of your season. But I think at that point you'll have that nice incremental step up and up and up, where it's not like really easy game, really hard game, really easy game. I think you're going to build up towards it. I think that'll probably be beneficial to playing a team like Georgia.
Yeah, I would agree. So, keep it here. We're going to have obviously a preview pod for South Florida. We'll have videos of DeBoer and the coordinators on Monday here when we talk to them. So if you want that Kadyn Proctor update, you can find it here. Subscribe there. Got great team content, a bunch of visitors on the recruiting side too who are in town that we have over on Tide Illustrated. So go subscribe there. We're in the thick of it now, folks. And I like that take too, Tony, after promoting the show too, that it's a little incremental, because sometimes teams do the whole cupcake team. Then week 2, they go to a top 5.
Well, Alabama's done that. They had cupcake and then Texas. And then, then you had that weird game against South Florida. So I think this is probably a better build.
Incremental.
Yeah.
Incremental. All right. Well, we're building up incrementally with our content as the season goes on as well. So there you go. We're following the pattern. But yeah, keep it here. We'll have tons of stuff here this week as we work toward UCF. So or USF. Ooh, bad confusion. They're not playing Central Florida. So keep it here until South Florida. We will talk to you next time.